the house which determines whether how we will be moving out in the hereafter, how we will be moving on from this innings of our life into the next innings of our existence, of our soul's existence. What will our soul be doing in the hereafter, and whether we have a chance of getting moksha, whether we have a chance of attaining salvation, whether we have a strong chance of leaving a strong legacy behind, whether we will be serving at the highest levels of our existence, or we will probably be spending a lot of our time at a more menial existence or materialistic existence also. All of this is determined by the 12th house, and hence the 12th house becomes very important from the moksha's perspective, from serving others, from leaving a legacy behind, also from health factors also, because the 12th house is also a house which also denotes solitude or being alone or being isolated also. Now, when is the time when we get isolated? Either we get isolated when we move away from the country of our birth, the place of our birth, and go very far away from where we were born, from where our family is, from where our community is, from where our society, immediate society is. We go away, far away, and we find solace, find residence, find career, find work in a place which is very, very far away from a birthplace. So we get isolated from family, we get isolated from our homeland, we get isolated from our loved ones. And so the 12th house in earlier times was described as the house of loss and seclusion and solitude. Why? Because in earlier times, if you were moving away from your place of birth, especially going into another kingdom, because earlier times there were more kingdoms rather than politically governed places, democratically elected places. Most of the places earlier on were kingdoms. So if you're moving away from one kingdom to another kingdom, especially a kingdom which is far away, then you normally took months together, sometimes years together to go into another kingdom. There was no way you could get connected to your loved ones. They didn't know where you were. You were living in a foreign land, isolated from your loved ones. So it was considered to be the 12th house, being away from your land, was considered to be a house of losses, seclusion, isolation, solitude. So it wasn't considered to be very good. Secondly, many times if you were going away from your country of your birth, land of your birth, you would also need to travel by the sea, travel over water, and that was seen as taboo, especially in the Indian subcontinent. The Indian culture, it was considered to be a taboo to cross the high seas because it was considered to be unsafe, and many times people who went in the seas, through the seas, never came back or came back much later in life. So the existence for their family, for their own homeland became almost as if they were non-existent. And so the 12th house was not considered to be the most auspicious house. In fact, it was considered to be the house of the losses or the biggest losses. It was also considered as the house of having relationships outside of marriage. For example, a person, earlier times in the Indian subcontinent, a person would be married at a very young age, maybe in his teens. And if this person is traveling to foreign lands and is gone away for years together, maybe he may find some other relationship outside of his married life in another country. And this relationship would be hidden from his family because his family would not know that he was in a relationship or he was with somebody in a foreign land, and maybe for a long period of time, because he would be away from his family, he would be away from his relationship for a long period of time. So if he was in a hidden relationship in a foreign land, far away from his own country, own homeland, own partner, so the 12th house was also considered as an inauspicious house, or a house of having a relationship outside of marriage and a hidden relationship. Thirdly, it was also considered as the house of hidden enemies. 6th house is the house of those enemies who are exposed, who compete with you on a day-to-day basis. This is also the house, the 6th house is also the house of your colleagues at work, who also compete with you for promotions, for growth. And So these are the ones who are in front of you, who are exposed enemies. The 7th house to the 6th house is the house of unexposed enemies or hidden enemies, and so the 12th house was also considered as a house of hidden enemies, because these people struck you from where you did not know. Some of these people could be from your own family, from your own friend circle, from your own network circle, yet they work behind your back, you never get to know. And that's why the 12th house was considered as inauspicious, because you didn't even know who's working behind your back. So there were a lot of inauspiciousness connected with or considered to be given to or attached to the 12th house. However, in today's time, because it is easier to go to foreign lands, so it has become more of a placement, especially of the Lagna Lord going into the 12th house, the 4th Lord of residence being in the foreign lands or in the 12th house. There's somebody who goes away from your country of birth, lives in a foreign land, works in a foreign land, and even does well in foreign lands. Why does well? Because the 12th house is the 9th house from the 4th house. So a person who finds home to a 4th house is the house of your home, the domestic life, so goes to foreign lands, establishes his domestic life there, calls his family there, makes foreign lands his home, and does well there, because the 9th house is the house of the biggest gains, and the 12th house is the 9th house from the 4th house. So does well in a foreign land is this placement. Especially if for example the 4th Lord goes into the 12th house or vice versa, then it becomes a stronger placement for this happening. Then the 12th house is also the second house from the 11th house, which means if you're serving society, if you have strong connections in the society, or you want to give back to society, then the 12th house becomes the house of you earning what you give to society. When you do something for the larger society, larger world, then you have a higher chance of attaining or getting close to the supreme energy, supreme Lord, getting moksha itself, because your legacy in this world or after you leave the world is of serving large swaths of population, not just a few people, your family or your well-wishers or your loved ones or your immediate friends or your immediate society. The 11th house is the house of serving large swaths, multitude, masses of people. And so if the 11th Lord gets connected in any way to the 12th house, then it also shows that you have served society at a large extent to a masses of people, and so you may also have a chance of attaining moksha. This becomes stronger if benefics get attached with the 12th house, or a beneficial planet or a friendly planet gets connected with the 11th house and the 12th house. For example, if it's the Virgo ascendant and the 11th house then becomes Cancer, and Moon goes into the 12th house in the Leo sign, so Moon being the Lord of the 11th house going into the 12th house in the Leo sign, a friendly sign. And what is Moon? Moon is about supporting, Moon is about nourishment, Moon is about understanding, Moon is about being more caring about others. So if you are caring for society, doing more for society and getting connected to helping people, the underprivileged, the poor, the needy, because the 12th house is the house of also hospitals or seclusion or lying in hospital. So many times this placement also denotes somebody who may be working in the health space, who are supporting people who are ill, or even the armed forces. Especially if Mars gets connected to the 12th house, then this person could be an army officer or somebody who works in the armed forces. If Jupiter or Saturn gets connected, it could also be somebody who is working in a foreign land but for a foreign embassy, foreign consulate, or representing your country in a foreign land, doing something for the foreign land, adding value to the foreign land, adding value to the government in a foreign land is the connection. Then the 12th house is also the 10th house from the 3rd house, which means you finding career in a foreign land. However, because the 12th house is also the house of losses, it could mean that if you put in your effort in the right direction, then you get gains out of the 12th house, whether working in hospitals, working in seclusion also. For example, if you are not in the team role but you are in an individual role where you have to sit alone, work alone on your computer for long hours, then too the placement or the connection between the 3rd house and the 12th house becomes apparent, where you get gains out of the more effort that you put in, being denoted by the 3rd house, while working secluded, working alone, even if you are in your homeland, even if you are in your own country, but you have to work alone for hours together in isolation with less connection to the team members or very limited connection, then to displacements or the sharing of energy between the 3rd house and the 12th house comes together. Then the 12th house is also the 7th house from the 6th house, which means that, as I said, the house of hidden enemies. But this is also the house of your service, because the 6th house is the house of service. Service getting into losses, either service getting connected to foreign lands, but it can also be service getting into losses, which means you are serving people but your service is not going to the right kind of people, or your effort is not bearing fruits for either you or your organization also. But to a large extent this is about you, because 6th house is the house of you serving others. And if, because the 12th house is the 7th to the 6th house, if there is a strong connection, it also shows that your efforts are going to waste, especially in the matters of career or serving. If you are not getting connected to multinational companies, if you are not getting connected to working in foreign lands, if you are not getting connected to working in isolation, then this is the stronger denotation that your service, your efforts are not going in the right direction. You are not getting the right fruits of your labor, of your effort. Then the 12th house is the 5th house from the 8th house. Now what is the 8th house? The 8th house is the house of obstructions, sudden challenges, sudden issues, but it is also a house of moksha. And 12th house being the 5th house from the 8th house, which means gains, because the 5th house is also the house of gains, may not be the biggest house of gains, which is the 9th from any house, but yet it is an auspicious house itself. So one moksha house, 5th house away from the other moksha house, which means the 12th house is the 5th house from the 8th house, which means if you help those who themselves face sudden challenges, sudden issues, sudden obstructions in life, you help them, you come to their rescue, you support them, you take care of them, then gains of the 8th house, where you help and support those who are destitute, who are facing challenges, sudden issues, somebody who's lying in bed, who's met with an accident, somebody is not able to pay their fees, somebody is not able to take care of their issues in life, and you are supporting those people, old, the destitute, you take care of them. Then one moksha house getting connected to another moksha house, a very, very strong connection that you could be somebody who may be getting moksha if the Lord is happy with you, if you have truly served the people of the 8th house. But this could also be getting connected to medical services or healthcare services also, because the 8th house is also the house of taking care of others, and 12th house is the house of hospitals, working in seclusion, or working for those people who themselves are secluded. A person lying in hospital is of course secluded from his family, so serving those people, or serving in a secretive or research oriented placement is also the placement of the 8th house and the 12th house, sharing energies of exchanging energies. Then the 12th house is also the 8th house from the 5th house. What is the 5th house? The 5th house is the house of speculative investments, where you make an investment so that you gain suddenly. If you are not taking care that your speculative investments are in the right manner and not too much materialistically driven, otherwise you could be facing losses, which the 12th house represents, which means if you are too rushing into dangers of getting into speculative investments, into shares, or buying another property without thinking, or putting all your money more like a gambling kind of a situation, then you may face larger losses. So one has to be very, very careful if the 5th and the 12th house share energies. 5th house is also the house which is the 8th to the 10th house, which is a sudden career change. So loss of a career change, which means that if there is a connection between the 5th and the 12th house, it could also mean that the 12th house becomes an obstruction to sudden changes of jobs, sudden changes of career. To that extent, it even provides stability to your career, gives more stability to long innings in a career or in a job before you make the change. This could also be that children go away from you, children are not as helpful to you or as profitable to you as sometimes we expect. So this is more a placement of also, especially if the 5th and the 12th house share energies, that the children go away from you, far away from you, or children don't get connected to you as much, or you are not finding time for the children, or you're not denoting enough time to the matters of children also. So if you have this energies, 5th and 12th house sharing energies, be careful of how you deal with children, what values and principles you bring your children up with. And lastly, the 12th house is the 12th house to the Lagna, to the ascendant. What does this mean? This means if you lead a life where you give up yourself, which the Lagna is, which the first house is, which the ascendant is, and you live your life for others, you don't look at materialistic achievements, you give up your materialism, or you lose your materialism, or you give up yourself, you lose yourself, then you can attain moksha. The highest form of moksha is where the 12th house gives you auspicious results. 12th house, mind you, is also having the spices energies, the house ruled by the biggest benefit, Jupiter. And if you are true to Jupiter, Jupiter is being large hearted, Jupiter is about being wise, Jupiter is about being religious, spiritual, Jupiter is also about doing more for others, expanding your ability to do more for others. Then moksha can come to you, salvation can come to you, moving up the spiritual realm can also come to you. So the 12th house is a very special house. Understand the 12th house better, understand the yogas and the doshas getting connected to the 12th house better, understand the planets being placed in the 12th house better, aspects on the 12th house, aspects from the 12th house better, so that you are able to get the most out of this life, materialistically also and spiritually as well. So friends, like this video, share this video, and if you're looking for a personal consultation from me, please reach out to me, the link is given below. Till some other time with some other video, this is your friend, astrologer and guide Irfan, signing off. Ciao.